With the Bureau XCOM Declassified hitting store shelves on August 20th, I know many of you have been wondering how this game compares to its predecessor, XCOM Enemy Unknown. Well, these are two very different games, so let's start with the basics. The Bureau XCOM Declassified is a third-person cover-based shooter, while XCOM Enemy Unknown is more of a turn-based strategy game. But while these two games have very different play styles, they still share a lot in common. So let's explore some of the similarities and differences between the Bureau and Enemy Unknown.
Back online.
Let's start with mission structure. So in Enemy Unknown, most of the time when you go on a mission, you're dropped into these small sort of arenas that are filled with enemies that you can't see right away. And the challenge there is to explore these areas carefully, sort of flesh out these groups of enemies one by one, take them out very methodically, and don't get overwhelmed in the process. With the Bureau, it's almost the complete opposite. Your encounters are very chaotic, very frantic. You're fighting large groups of enemies, and you're fighting all of them all at once, basically. You can see all the enemies can see you, and it's just straight craziness from start to finish. When you finish off a group of enemies, the mission isn't necessarily over yet. A lot of the missions I've seen and played so far have you going from sort of one fight to the next and to the next, usually 3 or 4 fights deep before a mission is over.
Back on you, Commander.
So when you're going through these levels in the Bureau and fighting all these different groups of enemies, chances are some of your teammates might end up dead. In fact, a lot of your teammates might end up dead. But between this game and Enemy Unknown, death and dying and bleeding out, those systems sort of work in much the same way. Basically, when your characters take too much damage, they'll fall down, they'll start to bleed out, and you have a certain amount of time to resuscitate them before they're gone for good.
I need reinforcements.
Where these two systems differ is that in the Bureau, there are these checkpoints you can pass through that will allow you to bring in new squad members to refill or replace fallen teammates. Whereas in Enemy Unknown, if one of your squad mates died, you were pretty much just out of luck until the end of the mission. This is also a good chance to talk about new character recruitment in the two games. If you'll recall, in Enemy Unknown, recruiting a new soldier was sort of a blind pick. You would recruit new soldiers, they'd come in, but you didn't really have any say over what their stats would be or what class they would be or anything like that. In the Bureau, it works a little bit differently. When you're recruiting a new character, you not only get to choose which class you want them to play as, but you can also choose a special background perk that's going to influence their playstyle a little bit. So for instance, for the Commando class, which is sort of like this game's version of the Assault class from Enemy Unknown, one of the background perks is Deniable Ops. And what this perk does is it allows the character to move safely while under fire. So like basically when he's moving back and forth between pieces of cover. And there are a lot of different background perks for each of the 4 different classes to choose from, so it gives you a lot more control over how you want to customize your characters and your new squad mates. Moving from recruitment to progression, when your characters level up in the Bureau, it works much the same way as in Enemy Unknown. Each character class also has its own skill tree, much like in Enemy Unknown, that branches the further down you get, forcing you to choose between one of 2 different special abilities. Ammo is another interesting point of difference between the two games. Obviously in Enemy Unknown you didn't really have to worry about ammo. The only thing you really had to manage was how often you reloaded your weapons. In the Bureau you do not have infinite ammo, and oftentimes I found myself running low on it. When that happens, you do have to leave cover, you do have to switch up your tactics and scout the map for discarded weapons or ammo caches to refill your guns. Mutons behave a little bit differently in the two games as well. In Enemy Unknown, they were big, hulking enemies that had lots of hit points, and while that's true in the Bureau, they have an added little twist with this armor that they wear. Basically, they're covered in giant pieces of armor that protect their arms, chest, legs, etc. And when you manage to knock off one of those pieces of armor, you can do extra damage to the Muton by striking that area of their body. You'll notice those handy shield icons from Enemy Unknown are also present in the Bureau. The half shield and full shield icons let you know how much protection a piece of cover is going to offer you. And just like an enemy unknown, in the Bureau you can get shot and will take damage even while in cover, which can be a little disruptive at first if you're used to playing other third-person shooters such as, say, Gears of War. Acquiring new weapons and technology in the Bureau is much simpler than it was in Enemy Unknown. If you recall in Enemy Unknown, you had this constant string of new research opportunities and new things to build in order to unlock new items and technology for your squad. In the Bureau, it's much simpler. When I was playing, I found a laser shotgun just lying on the ground. I picked it up, started firing it, and boom, was off to the races. No research, no extra time needed, just pick it up and start blasting.
You're okay.
Alright folks, I hope these examples help give you a better idea of how the Bureau compares to Enemy Unknown. For more information on the Bureau, XCOM Declassified, just head on over to the game space on GameSpot.com, where you'll find a couple of developer walkthroughs, as well as an episode of Ask GameSpot all about this game. That's it for me folks, thanks for watching.